Hello, Southern Maroon Mothers Club. Welcome. I'm Emily Schaefer. I'm on the Ed Series team. In today's webinar, I'm so excited to be introducing Jana. She's a wealth of information, very personable. You can ask her anything you want. She's up in Canada, and she's just so great. I'm just so excited. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jana. And then, of course, if you have any questions, you could put them in the chat. I'm sure Jana will explain all this to you. And we have made the video go empty, so we don't see anybody's face obviously for certain situations. We will also, for confidentiality, we'll also mute everybody. So if you do want to talk, put something in the chat or unmute yourself. It just keeps everything clear. So welcome. We're glad everybody could join us, and take it away, Jana.
Okay, let me just make sure my tech is sorted out here. So I'm going to mute all. Okay, so you're all muted. And if for whatever reason you want to come on live and have some one-on-one chat, I am totally open to that. But just know that your face will be recorded and sent out in the future. So let me just get through some introduction here, and then I'll get some more housekeeping stuff sorted out for you. So let me just make sure I'm on the right view here for recording. Yes, I'm on the right view. Okay, so as Emily mentioned, my name is Janna Denton-Howes, and this is my second webinar here with the Southern Maroon Mothers Club. I hope I got that right. So I'm really excited to be here. I love talking about the male brain. It's fascinating, and I hope you go away from this class feeling just as fascinated and intrigued and also ready. You've got some practical stuff under your belt. So I am a marriage coach. I have been doing that for a couple years now, and I've been married for 17 years. I got married when I was 17, which is kind of shocking for a lot of people. I have two daughters. They are 9 and 10, and I do live in Canada. I'm on Vancouver Island, so I have gotten the smoke that you guys have gotten. So hopefully we're all doing okay now with that. I specialize in two areas. One is with female sexuality. I help women who don't want sex, want it more. And I have a program about that I'll talk about at the end of this class. And I run another program called the Marriage Mastery Club, which is a 12-month group one-on-one coaching extravaganza. And we're 6 months into that. And so if you want to be on the waiting list, let me know. It's a really great program. And then I also work with couples one-on-one. I mentioned one specialty, but again, the other specialty that's what we're here for is the male brain. I find it exciting and wonderful and misunderstood. So I hope at the end of this, you all are feeling like you understand your husbands a little bit more, and maybe even understand yourself a little bit more. Okay, so logistics-wise, there is a chat box. If you're on your computer, it's on your right-hand side. You might have to, at the bottom, there is a menu, and you might have to click the chat to open it up. If you're on your phone, it's a little more challenging, and I've never used Zoom on my phone before. So if anyone wants to figure it out and then put it in the chat, then you'll help all of us a lot. So definitely ask your questions as we go. I'm going to be trying to be flexible with that. Usually I try to do all my presentation and then do questions at the end, but I want this to be a dialogue. And I also have your submitted questions. For those of you who have done that, thank you very, very much. But we do have 16 of them, so we will answer all those questions at the end. And I hope that I get to do it fully, so you guys got some stuff to work with. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. Today we are talking about how to get what you want from your husband. And I know that might sound like a very selfish title, but I think it's okay. But what I do find a lot of women is that they don't know what they want. So we're going to explore that a little bit before we dive into everything. Okay, so some of you did write some questions, but I would be interested, if you feel brave enough, to type in the chat box what you want from your husband. And I think it's really exciting to see that other women want the same things as we do. So while you're doing that, if those of you feel brave to do that and you can figure out the tech, I want to tell you some of the common responses I hear from women all of the time. And if you hear something that resonates with you, just type that in the chat. Say like, yeah, me too. So the first one is, I want my husband to just listen to me without trying to solve my problem right away. That's a really big one and a real frustrating one. I want to feel like we are a team, more emotional supports. Lisa says to understand the mental load I carry. Absolutely. I want more support with housework and child rearing and all the things like Lisa talked about. I want him to have more of a life. I hear that a lot from women. I'd like him to have friends, to have passions, to have interests. And I want him to not be on his phone very much. Any of you guys have that problem? And really related to that is I want to have some real conversation with him. I don't want to just talk about, kind of regular parenting. I mean, parenting is good, but just the logistics of life, I want to go a little bit deeper. So now that we kind of uncovered some of the things women want from their husbands, let's talk about the 3 areas that these all boil down into. And I hope to keep it really simple for you and actionable. So the first one is, well, actually, before I do that, you might be curious to know what your husband wants from you. Maybe you don't. But for men, it is desired, admired, and respected. And for women, it is protected, connected, and supported. So that's what we're going to look at today. Is this? And I kind of mixed up the order. There we go. It came to me. So we're going to look at supported. How can we feel more supported? How can we feel more protected? And how can we feel more connected? And then we'll get to your practical questions at the end. So with supported, I want you to think about things like, I want to feel supported with parenting or money or business ventures or careers or eating healthy or minimalism or budgeting. And women will often say, I want him to get on board with me. And I think it really boils down to, we like to feel like we're on a team. That feels so good for us. And from an evolutionary standpoint, it really makes sense because women would be in the village and they would be picking the berries and they would be gathering the water, and we needed that support structure. We needed that team to survive. If our husbands came home from hunting and they didn't have any meat for us, we would literally die if we hadn't created that teamwork and that support and that connection within the community. So we need to learn how to make requests so that we don't trigger our husbands anymore. So what I find a lot of women will do is, yes, I want to be supported and I want to be on a team. Well, first off, I feel like he should probably want what I want. That's just human nature. But secondly, we are really comfortable with criticizing rather than asking for a clear request. I just this morning got off a call with a client, and she was saying a lot of things like, when he's away for work, I don't get to go to the gym. I don't get time alone. I don't get to eat healthy because I'm just frantically running around. I'm so exhausted. So she was able to articulate it more in a criticism and a complaint rather than, I need to go to the gym. I need some time alone when you come home. Or I need some space, some introvert time, right? So what I really want to help you do is transform your criticisms into a clear request, and then you're going to get way more support from him. I like to share the 3 A's of communicating with men. So if you have a handy little pen, you probably would be really helpful right now to take some notes here. Emily asked me a question. So she wants me to say again, what were the 3 that men want? Men want to be desired, admired, and respected, and women want to be connected, protected, and supported. And of course, we are talking about gender generalizations here, so do take them with a grain of salt. Of course, if it doesn't land true to you, then it's because it's a generalization, and that's what we have to work with right now. So where was I? I was somewhere important. The 3 A's of communicating with men. So yes, grab your pen. The first one is appreciate. I'll talk about that in a minute. The second one is abbreviate. And the third one is articulate. So the first step is to figure out what you need support with. And that will often be alone. Then what you're going to figure out is, how can I say that in the least amount of words possible? And usually that comes through in a direct request. So for example, I need you to do, or can you do bedtime 2 nights a week? That's it. Not, can you do bedtime 2 nights a week because I'm so exhausted. I've been working overtime. I am up to my eyeballs in stress. I have this to do and that to do and this to do. All of that extra stuff that we do, all that's going to do is trigger him. And the way he's going to feel is what most men feel a lot of the times, and a lot of women don't even know this, is that they feel like failures, that they have done the wrong thing, that they're in the doghouse, and furthermore, their wives are unhappy. And if you didn't know this already, FYI, here's a top secret thing about men. They really want to make you happy. That is their ultimate. I know it sounds crazy because you're like, if you wanted to make me happy, then he'd do the dishes and he'd do the laundry and I wouldn't have to make these requests, right? But he doesn't read your mind, sorry. But he does want to make you happy. And so when you add all that extra stuff on there, then he's just going to be super triggered and he's not going to be able to hear the request amongst all of that. Now, why do women do that? We do that because we have a complicated relationship with our needs. We don't want to have needs. We don't want to be needy. Our culture doesn't say have needs. They say be independent and self-supporting and be a fierce woman and take care of yourself. And so that's why we do it. That's why we want to explain the whole reason why we need that support. All right. Where was I? So there we go. So that's the appreciate, abbreviate, articulate. So we covered the abbreviate and articulate part, but the appreciate part, again, that's so connected to them feeling like they're never really doing enough. I can't tell you how many times men say to me, no matter how hard I try, I'll never be enough for my wife. And so by sharing your appreciation when they do something, even though maybe it's not exactly the way we do it, like for example, when my husband cleans the kitchen, I could probably spend another 20 minutes cleaning the kitchen again. I'm sure some of you guys can relate to that. In particular, he likes to leave all the recycling neatly lined up by the sink instead of putting it in the recycling bin. And I tell you, every time I see that, it's very hard for me to take a pause and just appreciate what he has done to the best of his ability. So then if you appreciate, then he is way more available to listen to what you have to, what you're asking him to do. All right. What else? I don't want to miss anything here. One little more nugget about men here, and before we move on to the protected part, is that they really do feel like what's the word I'm looking for? Imposters most of the time. You wouldn't think that because the rule of stoicism that men go through in our culture. They really are taught to show no emotion if at all possible. And that starts at age 4. And I really hope that we're all trying to change that with our sons. I don't have sons, but if you do, I know you're working hard at that to allow them to express their feelings and to not shut them down. But for our generation and for unfortunately a lot of boys growing up these days, they are taught don't show vulnerability and don't show emotion. And so they really do put on this face that says, I'm not feeling anything. But underneath that, they are feeling like they're not doing a good job. They are failing. One man explained it to me like he's going through life, like it's like a big job interview. And he never knows at any moment if he has passed the interview and gotten the job, or if he's failed the interview and he's kind of failed at life. Shall we move on in that really super happy moment? So to recap, if you want to be supported by your husband, make a clear request using the 3 A's of communicating with men: abbreviate, articulate, and appreciate. We can talk about specific requests if you would like in the Q&A period at the end of this class, presentation, webinar, whatever you want to call it. So the next thing, so we just covered supported, that's what women want to feel. The next thing is protected. And I think this is a kind of a weird one for women, because we do want to feel like we can do anything, and that we have equality in our relationships, and we aren't some damsels in distress where we need our husbands to just run in and save the day. But there is something really powerful about the male quality of being able to be the provider and protector. And I'm not talking about going back into archaic days and stuff, but true equality is that you can have a man and a woman and that they complement each other. And I think that's really what it comes down to. We do not have to have the same roles in a marriage. And I mean, I'm a pretty radical feminist here, so I'm not saying anything that I hope you're not hearing me say. I hope I said that right. We have a really interesting relationship with safety as women, and because we experience it so much in our day-to-day life, it's hard to even imagine that men don't experience feeling unsafe. So for example, I'm sure you can all relate to walking through a deserted parking garage, for example, and thinking about your safety, maybe holding your keys in your hand, and being at home alone. My husband was gone last night, and really thinking about the doors, and even rehearsing what we would do if we were confronted by a difficult situation. I don't think I'm alone in the fact that I've kind of rehearsed what it would be like to be raped, just because I want to be prepared, and we live in a world that is really unsafe for women. Men don't experience this. And so the idea of us feeling unsafe and needing some protection is very foreign to them. So let me take it down a notch here, and just give you a practical example about this. So for a long time, driving in the car with my husband was really challenging because he's a very aggressive driver. He's a very good driver, but he likes to go fast, and it really bothers him when people go slow, especially in the fast lane. And he's gotten much better now over time because I've communicated my need for protection with him. But I felt really unsafe a lot of the time with him. I didn't know when he was going to explode in road rage. I didn't know how his aggressive behavior was going to affect me. I felt sometimes that my physical safety was in danger. And because I saw him as creating this unsafe feeling for me, he felt like a perpetrator of that feeling of being unsafe. Put in the chat box if you know what I'm talking about here. So there's so many ways in which our husbands can really help us feel safe. And it shows up in some interesting ways. For example, I can feel, because I'm a saver with money, I can feel really unsafe when it comes to money because for savers, money represents safety. Just so you know, for spenders, money represents freedom. And so I'm married to a person who likes to spend, and I'm a saver. And so when I was able to articulate to him that I really was feeling unsafe when it came to money, and that he could be my protector when it came to this, everything changed. I didn't really follow up with the car situation, because when I was able to articulate that I was feeling unsafe and he could be my protector in the car, things completely switched from him, because now it wasn't me criticizing him about his driving or criticizing him about his spending. I was taking responsibility for that need of mine to feel protected and safe. And now he was able to do that for me, which is such a gift. So now he's very sweet. When he's about to take a left-hand turn, he knows that I'm quite anxious around because I'm not in the driver's seat. And I don't know if he's going to take a quick turn and try to catch the light or something, or if he's going to wait. So he'll now talk me through it. And it's so routine that he does it every single time now. So he'll say, I'm going to go, or he'll say, I'll wait. So I don't have to panic thinking, oh, he's going to go, or, not know what's happening. When I ask him, oh, could you slow down a little bit? You're kind of tailgating. I don't say that, but the car ahead of us. He's happy to do that because he really enjoys being my protector. Other areas that this can show up is during sex. For example, women need to feel safe in order to enjoy the sexual experience, and men can't understand that. They don't understand the concept of feeling emotionally unsafe I don't think, we're not really talking about physical safety here. It is emotional safety. And so when we're able to explain that to men, and sometimes using the word comfortable works better than safe because they really can't relate to that, then you can get that comfort need met or that safety need met in a sexual experience. If that's a challenge for you, then let's do my program, because that's everything I talk about. Other times you don't feel protected, or you feel unsafe, or when he walks out of an argument or he gets mad. Men don't understand the effect that their anger and intense emotion can have on women, and that they can actually physically or emotionally feel unsafe. So by explaining to your husband this whole paradigm thing about safety and comfort, you can really invoke the hero mentality in him, which sounds cheesy, but it really will inspire him to be that protector for you and to keep you really comfortable and safe in those areas I explained. I mean, there's a reason why hero movies are so popular, is because deep down men just want to save the day. They just do. They want to be resourceful, and they want to be effective, and they want to solve the problems. Hence the reason why he's always trying to solve your problems, because that's how he's valuable in your life. So tell him how he can do these things for you and inspire him to be your hero. And then you can have that protected feeling that you might be craving. So supported, as a recap, if you want to feel supported, make a clear request. If you want to feel protected, invoke the hero in him. And you can literally use the word hero. I know it sounds crazy. As a side note, when I want my husband to do bedtime, I call him the bedtime hero. When I want him to do the dishes, I call him the cleaning up hero. You get the gist here. Okay, so there's no questions. So I'm going to move on to the last thing that women want to feel, which is connected. Yes, we do. It's so hard when we feel disconnected from our spouse and we feel like they're kind of disengaging from us. So you probably know this already. Again, this is a gender generalization, but for the most part, women feel connected through talk and teamwork too. We covered that in the supported one, but through talk, and men feel connected through touch. Again, this is a generalization, so sometimes that's swapped and sometimes it's mingled here. So don't feel abnormal or weird if that's not for you. But I'm just going to go ahead with that assumption. So the question really is, how do I get more talk out of my husband? So what makes men clam up? That's the big question. Why do they stonewall? Why do they get quiet? Why do they only talk about logistics rather than to connect? Well, the reason why they clam up is, for the most part, they interpret something you said or done or whatever. That's their thing. That's their responsibility. But they've interpreted it to mean that they're not important, that you don't care about them, and that you don't value their ideas or opinions. It's not because they think you're stupid or because they think you are not worthy of their time, or they just don't want to connect with you. It's usually one of those things. And because of the rule of stoicism for masculinity in our culture, they just don't know how to communicate that to you. Another reason is because they don't feel like the conversation is productive. So men talk, communicate for solutions, for outcomes, and women talk for connection. So if you're ever in an argument and at some point your husband says, there's no point in talking anymore, it's actually because he wants to maintain intimacy with you. And you want to continue the argument because having a little bit of connection with him is better than nothing at all. So you're trying to maintain intimacy by staying engaged with him. He's trying to maintain intimacy by shutting the conversation down, because men are always trying to get to the point of a conversation, the outcome. So let him know what you need. This is kind of a theme running through this. He doesn't get that connection out of talk. He's going to be looking for outcomes, and so he's going to have no clue the reason why you want to discuss something or you bring up a topic or you ask him about his day is because you want to connect with him. And you can even say, you know how when we touch or hug or kiss or have sex that you feel really connected with me? And he'll be like, yeah, of course, hello. And you can say, that's exactly what I get from talking to you and having a conversation with you. And a really nice way I like to do this with my husband is in the morning when we think about it, which is usually often, ask, what are you looking forward to about your day? It just gives me a little insight about what he's thinking about with work, and I get to share a little bit of what I'm doing with work. And it's just a nice, sometimes he's in the shower and I'm brushing my teeth. It's just a nice way to start the day. And then at the end of the day, it's just really nice to ask what went well. Because it's easy at the end of the day, you're tired and you're exhausted, and we tend to focus on things that don't go well. But it's nice to kind of end it on a positive note. And often those are the best conversations I have with my husband, because he does open up about his work, and maybe it starts with what went well, and then it kind of goes towards maybe something he's struggling with, or he's trying to work out, with the client or something. He's an engineer. So also just give him a little leeway, because men are not taught these relational skills of talking and asking questions. They really aren't. And I think we sometimes underestimate the amount that men are affected by our culture. I'm reading this book called The Boy Crisis right now, and it really outlines how much men are, women are affected too. We live in a messed up culture, but how much men are affected. And so he's not as confident as you are in the talking realm, and he's probably prone to feeling like he's not enough for you. And so go ahead and give him a little leeway, and maybe give him a little support with that. It's really easy for our brains to interpret his silence to mean that lots of other things he's not thinking about. So I'm going to end here with my favorite tool for having the connection in the quickest way possible. And it often will start with some sort of tension. So for example, you made a clear request and asked him to take out the garbage on Thursdays. How stereotypical is that? And you come home from work on Thursday and the garbage is sitting there and hasn't been taken out, and it's going to be sticking up the whole garage for another week. And you look at that garbage can and you immediately feel angry, of course. Maybe resentment. I do so much around the house and he does nothing. Resentment is an unmet need, just FYI. We can talk a little bit more about that. I can't cram everything in this class. But so you have this negative emotion. And then what you might start getting curious about is, what is the interpretation you've made about that action that just happened? And more often than not, it's, he doesn't care about me because he's left that garbage for me to figure out. I've asked him that. It might be I'm not important, or my needs are important to him. All sorts of stuff can come up. And once you figure that out, once you figure out your interpretations, say, for example, he does something and you interpret it to mean he thinks you're stupid, or he thinks you're not worthy of attention, or not enough. That's a big one for me, that I'm not a good enough mom or a good enough wife. So you spin that around into what I like to call a vulnerable question. And so you just ask him the question, point blank. Do you think I'm a good mom? Do you think I'm a good wife? Am I important to you? Do you value my needs? And he might get a little defensive. That's okay. Because he doesn't want you to make those interpretations. He's not trying to make you feel that way. And that might be kind of a weird way to end this, but it's been my most profound tool that I use with clients. And so I really wanted to share that with you. So I made this little homemade diagram for you, for those of you who are taking notes. Look at all you online with us. Isn't that awesome? Let's see if you can see this. So if you want to feel supported, make a clear request. If you want to feel protected, invoke the hero. And lastly, if you want to feel connected in the quickest way possible, ask a vulnerable question. So at some point, I talked about sex briefly here, but because women generally feel more connected through talk, what if you're not having a sex regularly, or you're not having that great, awesome touch that married people get to have together, and he isn't feeling connected to you? So I just want you to think for a moment what it would feel like if you didn't have those heart-to-heart conversations ever, or it's been months and months or years. Yes, you might be really understanding. He's busy. You love him. You'll be very forgiving. But there comes a point where you're just really missing this connection, right? And so if you're having regular sex and that's not an issue for you, ignore this part. You're good. But if it's been kind of tricky, this was my situation for many, many years of my marriage. And I'm just going to meet you guys all here. And if you're struggling with kind of wanting sex and you feel kind of like it's a chore and you'd literally rather clean the toilet than do that with your husband, you don't feel the mood. I got all sorts of things I can say right now. No spark. I just want to invite you to my program, 30 Days to Wanting It More. And I talk all about that. I talk about the male brain a lot. I mean, communication comes up so much. But it's a really fun group to be in, and it's online, so you don't have to have awkward conversations with anybody, but we do have a pretty fantastic Facebook group. So I'll put that in the link to join that program in the chat. We're doing a live round. It's self-guided, but we're doing a live round September 24th, which means live Q&As with my husband and I, which is super fun. You can ask him all sorts of questions. And then we have group discussions. We have about over 300 women in the program right now, and we get pretty hilarious sometimes. So that was it. I think we did it. That was half an hour. I would love to know, because I've just been kind of spewing information out to you, if you have any aha moments that you've had during this talk. If you have any questions for me, we can get really super specific here. So if you're like, I need to feel supported in this area of my life, we can totally do that. Anything like that we can do. So I'm going to watch the chat here, and I'm going to pop over to the Google form that was shared, because we do have some questions there to answer. We have 16. And so, but I'm going to give whoever is on live priority. So you go ahead and type those questions in there while I'm talking. Okay. How to ask for things without him feeling criticized, or that I am trying to argue with him. So again, this might be review, but I think review, we can hear things a million times, that's fine. So again, to recap, if you want to ask for something without him feeling criticized, you, number one, figure out what your need is and get really specific about it. You know, I need him to clean the bathroom once a week. I need him to come home at 6 o'clock every night, right? Then you ask him with using the 3 A's: appreciate, abbreviate, and articulate. I experience something in my throat almost. Like when I go out there, we have a carport, we don't have a garage, and often my husband will be working on the boat or whatever, and he'll just pile things in the carport, which drives me nuts because it's not a storage facility, and I feel like we just look like a bunch of hillbillies to our neighbors. So the other day I was like, okay, I've got a lot of emotion around this carport. I've asked him many times, but I know if I ask a clear request, then I'll get what I want way more quicker. So I went out there and I said, hey honey, John, my husband's name is John. Hey John, can you clean the carport this weekend? And he looked at me and he said, yep. And I kid you not, there was something in my throat that was like, I really want to say more. I really want to say more. So I literally just spun around and closed the door and ran away. And guess what? He cleaned the carport. Hallelujah. And guess what? It's messy again. So I'll have to ask him again. All right. Aha moment. The idea of asking specific questions and sharing that you need to connect through talking instead of just solving the problem. Always working on this with my partner. Yes, ongoing. I'm not saying I'm an expert. I am learning. Here's another question. How helping to communicate about more participation in household chores without sounding like nagging. Again, ask a clear request. Another one, my husband is very focused on his work and his career and has a hard time talking about other things right now. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I find myself recounting my day or sharing news I learned, which seem of little interest to him before he changes his focus back to work-related topics. And although I'm very appreciative of what he's doing for our family and how hard he's working, I'd love to spark a conversation that are more meaningful for both of us to participate in. What can I do to make my side of the conversation more interesting to him, and how can I encourage him to focus on talking about something other than just work? So there's probably a couple of things going on here. The first thing is that I'm hearing you're feeling like what you have to offer is not very interesting. And if you feel that way, then you're going to be feeling a little bit insecure about sharing things that you've been pondering or thinking about. And so I just want to encourage you that you have lots of things to be interesting about. And our culture does, I was very negative about stay-at-home moms, but you are raising the next generation. There couldn't be anything more important than that. So please go ahead and talk to him about your day. That's intimacy. Men will often get very focused on their work and career because it's just what they're told they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be providers and protectors. And so I wonder if him talking about his work is actually kind of like a hunter coming home with the kill and being like, look what I've done. And so he might be looking for a little bit of like, good job, which we all kind of appreciate, you know. Other things you could do is actually think of some questions to ask him. When I thought of that question, what went well today, or what are you looking forward to today, things changed dramatically for us. And it was just one question, but it was pre-thought out. So maybe you could pre-think out some questions to ask him to stimulate some conversation. And I don't think there's any harm in actually just telling him that you really want to connect through conversation, and you love his work and are very appreciative, but gets, I don't want to say gets old. That would probably not be very good to say, but that you'd really like to explore some other topics with him. Mm-hmm. All right. Justine, what do you suggest when I have to ask a direct question? He says he'll do it, and it does not get done. I think everyone's nodding their head in agreement right now. By the third time I have to ask, my delivery is not so friendly. Oh, Justine. I do not have a magic solution to this. So what I do say, though, is that some things are just on our radar. And some things as women, and some things that we just are way better at. For example, women will generally see areas of improvement everywhere. And so we're constantly looking for things that can be made better. And so it's just on our minds more. And while I wish I just don't have I've tried to find the magic solution to this, but the only solution I can find is to don't give up asking. And I know it's frustrating, and I know it feels unfair, and I'd say, yes, it is unfair, especially when we talk about that mental load. But continue to ask. I had to ask my husband for about 10 years to not slap my butt in the kitchen. Eventually, he got it figured out. Good luck. All right. And Emily, when you're sending me a message, you're doing it privately so no one else can see you. But Emily's just saying, be consistent. All right. Other question here. What to do? I want him to A, do more without being asked or nagged. Yes. And B, realize that I do more without me having to point it out. Yeah. Okay, so do more without being asked or nagged. I think this is a tricky topic I tread because I do feel like the burden is more on women's shoulders, and there's many reasons for this. Probably primarily, the feminist revolution did a lot of great things for us, but one thing it didn't do so great for us was it got us equality in the workforce, but then it didn't really change things that much at home. So women are now doing double duty. And Also, women are really good, for the most part, at multitasking. Men have single focus. So, for example, you might notice when your husband is loading the dishes, for example, he can't carry on a conversation with you and load the dishes at the same time. You might notice that he has to stop. It used to drive me nuts. I'm like, why can't you multitask? It's just their brain structures. They're more compartmentalized and more single focused. And so women, on the other hand, we have diffuse awareness. And so we're able to keep many awareness of like what the kids need, what's at work, what the household needs, the shopping list, all of that stuff. So sometimes it just becomes about saying, this is a strength I bring to the relationship. And that might help you feel less resentful about it, because continuing to hope your husband just notices when toilet paper needs to be purchased or the light bulb needs to be fixed or something like that might just drive you insane. I like to also switch around and say, look, there are some things that I never think about. This is so stereotypical, but the oil changes, I just never think about it. But my husband does, and he does make sure they get done. All right. One thing that has really helped us around housework is having one day of the week in which we all do housework together. That helps the kids get involved. I'm not saying that they're great at it. Totally failing on that end anyways. Sometimes they clean their room anyways, I'm not a parent coach. Anyone got any tips for me around that? But I found that once we started to do housework together and we had very clear roles, my husband does the kitchen, the living room, the vacuuming, the windows, I do the laundry, the bathrooms, and the bedrooms, then it feels good. It just feels good to be all doing it together. And then usually I cook and he does the dishes. So just having those things set up ahead of time that are routine and structure, so you don't have to have those conversations all the time. All righty. Yes, yelling and arguing. Every topic is a battle. So this really boils down to those interpretations you're making. Anger isn't really emotion. Anger is just the tip of the iceberg. And what's under the water is a big old block of hurt. So whenever you feel angry or frustrated or any of those negative emotions, ask yourself, what hurts right now? And if you can figure that out, generally we all have our go-to interpretations, those tender spots that will kind of always be there, unfortunately. Then you can switch it around and ask the vulnerable question. I call this the intimacy intervention model. I use it a lot with couples, and miraculous things have happened not only in my marriage once I employed this tool, but I've seen it with most of my couples. It's really, really powerful. How can I work on not coming off as bitchy when I'm aggravated? Again, when you're aggravated, you're hurt. So if you can figure out what you're hurt about, then you can turn it around and you can actually talk about what's really going on rather than feeling that angry. And I'm wondering right now if it's that just aggravated at life. Like, so maybe you're not aggravated at your partner, but you're just feeling kind of, PMSy perhaps. I'm totally like that the week before my period. What I do during those times is I invoke the hero in my husband. And so I'll just say, like, I'm really stressed with work, or I'm overwhelmed, or my period's about to come, I'm super hormonal. Just FYI, it's me, not you. And I find that when I do that, my husband is so much more willing to just be forgiving if I'm sharp with him, or if I'm anxious, more very on edge or something. And so just remember that your husband will always interpretation those aggravated actions to mean that he has failed, he's done something wrong, and you're mad at him. But he won't necessarily have the vocabulary to ask that question. Well, I see you guys are still here, so please let me know if you have any questions or any moments, but I'm just going to continue on here with these questions. All right. During the week, we find it hard to connect due to long work hours and stress of everyday life. Man, that's an epidemic. The weekend is much easier and lighter. How can we better connect during the work week? Having connection rituals is really powerful. And I've already mentioned the one with my husband and I, what are you looking forward to? And often this is like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Again, it's like he might be in the shower and brushing my teeth or going to the bathroom or something. Or maybe it's just when we wake up and before we rush off on our day. And then when he comes home, what went well. So having these like rhythms, and honestly, just 10 minutes you don't have to do anything elaborate. I hate all those like marriage exercises that have you do all these elaborate things because nobody ever ends up doing them. The other kind of really good thing is texting. Texting is so powerful for a couple. And just, I'm thinking of you, or a selfie, a heart emoji, just to kind of stay connected. And that means if you're at work, you can kind of respond when you can. And it's worked super well for my husband and I. You guys have any other suggestions for staying connected during a stressful and busy work week? Please let me know, or let everyone know in the chat. All right. How do I get my spouse to help out around the house, yard, with kids more without him thinking that I nag? You guys see a theme here. We both work full time, and I feel like I shoulder 90% of the workload and 100% of the 120% of the mental load. Yeah. Yes, sister. I hear ya. Okay, so what could I share that I haven't shared already? Ask clear requests. Acknowledge that you are really good at this. It's a strength you may bring to your relationship. Routines around housework and childcare. And feeling okay with your needs. For like, it's okay to need to go to the gym. It's okay to want some child-free time. It's okay to just want to sleep in. Like, all these needs are okay. And I find women just struggle to feel like they even deserve it or will, and that's super wrapped up in the sexual experience as well. Because women just give and give and give and give. And then they come to the sexual experience and they're like, really, I have to give some more. So figuring out how you can find some pleasure in your everyday life is a good idea. What are ways to open? Oh, Emily's got a recommendation. I recommend no screen time as soon as you climb into bed. Oh, yes. That is one we have been successful at for periods of our marriage, let's just say. But if you are going through a period of your marriage that is feeling particularly disconnecting and particularly busy, there's no quicker way to connect when you're slightly bored and you only have each other to hang out with. What are ways to open the dialogue in the first place? I don't have conflict with my husband around asking him of the things in the wrong way, although I probably would if I did ask him. Oh, so maybe she's saying I don't ask him to do anything. But likely that is because I don't even ask. Oh, here we go. He doesn't take initiative, helping with dinner, sharing the baby responsibility, load on the weekends, etc., which I find myself resenting and frustrated with sometimes. But to be fair, I don't bring it up as I assume there would be conflict if I do. And I also know better than to bring it up in the moment. I'm frustrated as my delivery will not likely be pleasant. Yes, so this is really confirming because I feel like I've covered this stuff for you guys. So go back to that. Please don't stuff it down ever. It's never a good idea. It erodes intimacy and it's really detrimental on your marriage in the long run. Even if things are uncomfortable and you don't know how to word them properly and you're trying your best but you can't, please say something, okay? People shy away from conflict all the time. But the research shows that happily married couples, it doesn't that they don't argue all the time. It actually boils down to how respectful they are of each other, okay? So please don't shove it down. Assess what your needs are. Ask him, make a clear request, invoke the hero, ask a vulnerable question, all those good stuff. How can I avoid getting into... Lisa has a tip. More intimacy tips, please, to get in the mood when you've had a long day and are feeling resentful that you have done it all. Lisa, we'll have a little one-on-one at the end of this call, okay? Because I could talk about sex forever. But I do want to make sure I get to these questions that are more specifically about communication with men. How can I avoid getting into a debate around who is more stressed? Oh my gosh, I love this one. It's so common. Oftentimes I talk about struggles of my day with my husband, and in turn he responds with his own struggles, and it feels like he's trying to one-up me or compete with me, when all I want for him to listen and acknowledge my feelings or be a bit empathetic. I've been a stay-at-home mom for 10 months. Bless your heart, honey. I did that for 6 years, and it's not easy. Since our first baby was born, and I'm starting a new job next week. I'm very anxious about this and stress level of trying to take care of everyone and need support. You do need support, and I'm really glad that you articulated that. So the question was, sorry, I got distracted by a question over there. Okay, so the debate about who is more stressed. So we have this real scarcity mentality, not only in our culture, but when it comes to talking in our relationships. We feel like there's only so much to go around. And if I am feeling like, if I'm getting all the sympathy and empathy and all that, then there's no place for my husband. So we kind of feel anxious around giving support and empathy to our partner. So if I was talking to both of you, this would be a different conversation, but I'm only talking to one of you, and the one of you who you can only change yourself. So it sounds like two things are going on. One, probably when you're talking about how stressed you are, it's triggering him. Again, I've talked about this, but it's triggering him to feel like he's not good enough for you. And you're super unhappy, not just with your life, but you're super unhappy with him. So you might kind of preemptively strike that and say, look, I'm really happy with our marriage. And even if you're like 60% happy with your marriage, just go ahead and say that, okay? I'm really happy with our marriage. I'm really happy with you as a husband. I'm really proud of you. I admire you. Thank you for being my hero. All these things are so nice for men to hear. I would love, all I really need right now, and how you could really support me and be my hero, is just listening to me. I just need someone to say, that sounds hard. So give him the words, because he won't know how to do this. Okay, this is a woman thing. We know how to do the whole like, oh yes, honey, that sounds tough. Oh, but men don't. So set him up for success. All right. So that's one thing. And then if he just kind of launches into, well, I'm so stressed, model what you're hoping he'd do for you. So just do the whole like, that sounds really hard. And if he does trigger you when he's talking about being stressed, model that as well, and just be like, isn't this crazy? When you were talking about how stressed you were, all I could think about is how you think, I'm just making this up, but how you think I'm not doing enough around the house, and so you don't feel supported. Is that how you're feeling, or am I just making that up all in my head? So much about communication is talking about what's not being said. All right. Back over here. My dear husband tends to default to the devil's advocate when I have a personal issue. In turn, I feel like he doesn't have my back. Secondly, my husband generally lacks empathy. How do you deal with it? That was so related. The devil's advocate is because he's feeling defensive, because he feels like you are sideways criticizing him. Just knowing that might help you. That term, have my back, is actually really good to use with men, because they really relate to that feeling of somebody having their back. Because again, evolutionary perspective, he was the hunter, and if his buddy did not have his back, he would die or not get the kill, and his family would die. Okay, so just use that term with him. It'd be really good. Lacking empathy, how do you deal with this? Again, boys were not taught when they were young to be like, oh, honey, I'm sorry, cry it out, come here. Like, they just weren't taught that. They were taught, suck it up and don't be a pussy. That's what they were told. And so we have to understand that he's really not doing it on purpose. He just doesn't have the skills. And so again, I would ask the clear request. Could you just say, oh, that sounds hard? You know, I want to just mention, I listened to this, I read this recently, is that when we have a problem, so let's say our husbands are the dogs, it's like a terrible analogy, but we've taken our dog to the park, okay? And we're going to go, he thinks you're going to go throw around the ball like a little catch, you know, release, I don't know what the word is, throw, catch and throw. I don't know. So you've taken out the ball, and the ball is the problem he could solve because he loves being effective to you and being resourceful and solving your problems. So you've like taken out the ball and you're like, I'm so miserable about this. Everything's so terrible. And he's like, like, okay, I'm excited. I'm ready. And then when you say, I just want you to listen, it's like you just put the ball back in your pocket. So it's very painful for men. Not to say that he should solve all your problems, but I just hope that gives you a little bit of compassion for what he's dealing with. He just wants to solve your problems. So again, just let him know how he can be your hero and support you with that. Oh yeah, +1 to the competition, regarding who's doing more or who is more stressed. Yeah, and that, yeah, I could talk about that forever. I say something. Sometimes he hears me and retains the information. Other times, he doesn't even remember the conversation. I'd like to get better at figuring out which zone he is in so I can make sure I have his attention first if needed. This might be related to single focus in men. So he might be focused on a thought about work or an email or something, and so he literally can't hear you. But this also might just be personality-wise. Like, for example, if he is a highly sensitive person, for example, if you guys know about the whole HSP thing, they usually tend to have rich inner lives. And so these are people who daydream a lot and dream a lot. And so this is me, actually. So sometimes my husband will say something to me. It drives him crazy, poor guy. I'm sure it drives you crazy too. And it's like he's been talking to me for a while, and I have to like embarrassingly admit, can you start from the beginning? Because I really wasn't there with you the whole time. And so probably you might just want to ask him, be like, are you ready to have a conversation? Or like, hey, I want to tell you something important. Is now a good time? And so setting him up for success and also setting you up to have less frustration would be a good idea. All right. We often have a conversation where I think we decided on something and then later he'll have a different take on what was decided than me. Isn't this so interesting how the two were so related? So that is very common. I just want you to say it's not because there's anything wrong with you guys or wrong with his brain or you or anything like that. It's really common because we live in our own bubble of reality. It's so easy to jump to conclusions or make interpretations. I mean, these things happen on a nanosecond. You're not even calculating things. So when I work with couples, I help them really slow down interactions and kind of analyze, like, okay, this happened and then this happened. Oh my gosh, isn't that crazy? I jumped from this to this. And so first off, it's completely normal. You're not only dealing with different brains, but you're dealing with a female and male brain, which are completely different. So the idea here is to not make you wrong or not make him wrong, but to just give yourself some compassion, because this could quickly turn into, you don't care about me or you don't think I'm important enough to listen to. So you got to check your interpretations about that. I mean, I'm sure there's all sorts of other tactics you could do in terms of writing it on sticky notes or something like that. But I think really when you deal with the core of it, it won't bother you so much. I have a husband who's very hands-on and helps a lot around the house, but I constantly have to tell him exactly what needs to be done, how, when, etc. Sometimes I do the tasks myself only because I find it exhausting to go through everything that needs to be done. When I've asked him to initiate and do things on his own without my reminders, he says that he does not have the confidence to do so and blames it on me. I hope y'all are seeing the pattern here, and it really, women are just better at it. And that's not a cop-out, and that's not saying he shouldn't help, and that's not saying anything there at all about that, okay? But yes, and the mental load, seriously, is for real. Like, this is not, we're not making this up, and a lot of times it's not fair. And I really wish I could just say, here's the magic pill for like having your husband to see all the things, you know, you see. He literally doesn't see them. I'm not kidding you. And the more we can kind of realize that, and the more peace we're going to have at home. And so, what else could I say about this rather than just banging on about the same old stuff? So he feels like he doesn't have the confidence to do so and blames it on me. It's very scary for men to go out on a limb and to do something and then to feel criticized, because again, they have that feeling of, I'll try and try and try and it'll never be enough. So what's the point in even trying? Because again, women are always seeing areas of improvement. So we do generally focus less on what they've done and focus more on what they haven't done. So if you want to build up his confidence and taking initiative around the house, what I would do is go on a week-long criticism detox. And so you literally, the only thing you say to him around housework or cleaning or kids or food or anything is just the things that you really appreciate and you're really happy and you're really proud. And just say things like, you make me really happy. I'm really happy to be with you. You're a really good husband. This is just kind of human nature. We all thrive on encouragement, right? So this is with our children, with all of this, with our friends, all of it. So try that, and I hope it works. Lisa's saying a hallelujah to the mental load I was referring to. Yes, I know. Sucks. All right. It would be awesome if husbands would take more initiative so wife wouldn't have to ask. That's literally another question. Yes, it would be awesome. They don't see it. They're doing their best. Try to have regular routines that will help. So someone just wrote, emotional intimacy, more partnership with household responsibilities. I feel like I've covered that already. How to connect in conversation beyond work and schedules and childcare. We used to have great deep conversations, and those have been replaced by, tell me about your day and what's your schedule look like tomorrow. This is a second question. It's so exciting to see these themes, and I hope it's helped you not feel alone in your questions about your marriage and connecting with your husband. Again, maybe you could think of some topic questions to start a conversation with, like I like to talk about the future. So like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Or where do you think we're going to be in 10 years? Or, you know, if we had to give some advice about marriage, what would it be? If you guys can think of more, it would be cool if we could come up with like a list of conversation starters that are a little bit more meaningful, a little bit more deep. Sometimes I talk a lot about marriage stuff with my husband, and that usually sparks a lot of great conversation because he can offer the male brain perspective, which I really value. But then also, like, sometimes it's good to just watch like a Netflix documentary or something and then have a conversation. FYI, really good one for men is called The Mask We Live In. It's a Netflix documentary. It's a really good one around men. It's really exciting to watch it with your husband because I think that'll really help spark meaningful conversation. Okay, Emily, let's do one question. I just have to respect the hour time. Oh yes, you have been incredible. Okay, so I just want to, Emily's basically saying, let's wrap it up. Okay, let's wrap it up. But I do want to say, how do you get in the mood when you've had a long day and are feeling resentful that you have done it all? Anyone wants to know more, just check out my website, jannadentonhowes.com. I think it was in like the events thing or whatever. And I've got lots of free videos on there. I talk about sex and getting in the mood. That's kind of my thing. But the trick is, Lisa, is to not enter the bedroom in a pleasure deficit. You need to enter the bedroom with some pleasure below your belt. Did I just say that? Under your belt. But you need to enter the bedroom with some sort of enjoyment of your day, whether that's slowing down and enjoying your cup of tea in the morning, looking at the sun, having a warm blanket. I mean, these are really simple things. So that's one. Yeah, the resentful part. The resentful part is when you think that sex is good only for your husband or only for your marriage. But in fact, sex is really good for you, not so much from a connection standpoint, but from a health benefit standpoint. So if you could start seeing sex as a self-care practice rather than something that you have to provide for somebody else, that would really help change your mindset and really do create a sexual experience that is a self-care practice. So something that you radically enjoy. If it's a maybe, it's a no for all things sexual, and slow it all down. Slow it all down, like way, way down, like 100 times slower. And take and prioritize your pleasure in the sexual experience, and then you'll start looking for it more. Okay, awesome. Sex for self-care. Yeah, great. Okay, guys. Well, it's been such a joy and a pleasure, and I hope we can continue this conversation. Send me an email if you want to. It's really helpful for me to get feedback. So if you liked a part, or if you thought maybe I didn't, I should have talked more about something else, let me know, and then I can improve. And then maybe check out my website. You can get on my email list. I have a free video there, and then we can stay connected that way. Okay.
Anna, can you just type your website in there or your email in the chat?
Totally.
Because I don't think everyone's going to know how to spell your last name.
Why not? I don't understand.
So easy.
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
But we thank you so much for all your tips and tricks.
Sure.
Awesome.
Lisa wanted this.
Love that. Yes. Okay. And you have so many great things. Don't you have a YouTube channel or something?
If you go to my website, everything's there. So
your Facebook, all that good stuff.
Yes.
And it's such a pleasure having you, and we can't wait to have you back.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
So we'll try to put you in.
I love talking about this stuff. Okay. Talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.